Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Daily live streaming interactive. Featuring Mrs. Backup. Subscribe, hit the notification, smash the likes. Now, here's Backup Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to Investment Perspectives. It is Micky B Fresh time up in the house. Micky B, how are you doing this evening, my friend?
I'm doing great, Brad. Glad to be on the show. Good evening, everyone.
I tell you something. I look, this is long overdue, and I don't think it was that long ago you were here. It's just that we miss you. So, you're on fire. You're a guy who just stays constantly researching. That's probably somebody from the government looking for you right now. You know what I mean? We heard the sirens. But at any rate, we know that you're just constantly working hard, looking at the information. We're going to talk about some things tonight, and one of which is going to be Codius, the abstract layer. And we're going to look at that and how it works as far as the ILP, the Interledger, and the XRP Ledger. And that's going to be interesting. Another thing we're going to touch base on tonight, too, is the XRP Ledger, the XRP token, and a stablecoin potentially launched off of that, and have a discussion about that, too. So let's start with Codius. I think that's the tougher one. Where do you want to start with that, Micky?
So everyone's all heard of Codius. We know that they brought it out in 2013, 2014, and it was promoted as this revolutionary technology. So Ripple, when they were designing the XRP Ledger, this is where I want to start, all right? Because the XRP Ledger is not a blockchain or a distributed ledger. It's a credit network that was adapted with a consensus and a transaction protocol to create Ripple Protocol and XRP, right?
Yep.
They chose not to put in the smart contract Codius and build it into the network, and instead kept it separate. Where in Ethereum, that layer they built into the network, gave it its own programming language, and kind of made their own walled garden and issued tokens off it. Where Ripple knew they had something special here. Like typical Ripple had foresaw the future, what's going to come with the cloud industry and how that's going to boom. And in the last 7 years, cloud hosting has boomed with Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft, Azure, and the data has boomed. So now they have this technology that they've been holding for the last 6-7 years that could now connect to the outside world and to the XRP Ledger. So this is our abstraction layer that could have smart programs and distribute applications and smart oracles connected to the ledger. So it gives the XRP Ledger more flexibility. It could do so much more than, say, Ethereum is ever going to be able to do.
Right. It's just so far superior, right?
Now, this distributed abstraction layer could actually have consensus built in private networks. So if you had a private network, say PolySign, who's managing keys or custody, they could create their own federated nodes and have a decentralized network. Sure. And there could be multiple of these, and they all tap into the XRP Ledger.
Yeah.
So there's so much more flexibility here. And it's coming. They haven't used it. They've stuttered. But that's about it. You want to move on to the other thing?
Well, I mean, we can, but before we do, I mean, there was a diagram you shared with me, and I put it down on the whiteboard. We talked about this, and it's really the architecture difference between standard software architecture and the Codius decentralized application layer. Can I show this and have you talk about this for a second?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Because, I mean, this is, first of all, this drawing is done to scale. I want to let everybody know. I went to school for it.
Whiteboard time.
Yeah, whiteboard time. But also, this is. I do want to say too that we've had a discussion here, quite heavily about the protocols being adopted, right, and being picked up, and understanding and going into conversations. I just did a whiteboard not long ago about different protocols, right, that currently exist for the internet. So I think this diagram is pertinent because it really does help us, like Glenn Hutchins said, that the value's in the protocol, and you start to understand why when you start to see it laid out in front of you about what the tasks are with the different layers. So you want to talk about that, Micky?
Absolutely. So when we talk about the protocols, they're all in different layers. So that's a modular setup. That's how the internet's designed, how data is set up. So blockchains are set up in the same way. So at the lowest level, we have our XRP Ledger.
Right.
Now, within that layer, you have multiple protocols. You have the consensus protocol, you got the transaction protocol, you got the decentralized exchange, the IOUs, everything else that's built into the ledger, the accounts. And then above that, you have your Codius, which is an abstraction layer, which is not built in. It's not deterministic to the consensus of the XRP ledger. It doesn't have to follow the rules. It's hosted in the cloud. And it could communicate with the top layer, which is your wallets, your distributed applications, your real-world asset price feeds from like NASDAQ,
right,
other blockchains like Bitcoin, Ethereum, interledger connectors, bank ledgers too. Basically anything in the real world. It can connect to any ledger.
So that's the path, and that's what we need to understand is the path that it goes to and where it sits in that path as an abstract middle layer.
Yes. And now a lot of people would be thinking right now, I would think, hey, doesn't ILP do that? Is that what interledger does? Yes. Now, Codius was designed first. Then interledger came along. Quick tidbit, if anyone knew, the word coil is Codius and interledger kind of put together. Delete coil.
Nice.
It's Codius and ILP, coil.
Wow.
So they're meant to go together with each other. Codius sits on top of the ILP layer.
Very nice.
And now you could build in the smart contracts. You build in pull payments now with this. It's meant to go perfectly with ILP. You could bridge between value networks. You could do synchronized end-to-end escrow payments with receipts and cryptographic keys. You could auctions for digital assets, cryptocurrency wallet controls, derivatives that monitor the performance of a digital or non-digital asset, futures, forward, swaps, options.
Yeah.
Then you got debt and equity, smart property, tokenized assets, voting, like all the things that are coming to the ledger. So Legenic with tokenized stocks.
Absolutely.
You need the connection to the brokerage firm, to those price feeds of the tokenized stocks. Where are those coming from?
That's exactly right. So let's talk about that for a second, because
yes,
that is really pertinent. So, all right, so you're talking about Codius providing these clean connections and interfaces with these legacy type systems that are out here, right?
Yes. And now the Codius or whatever is using Codius layer, either it's PolySign or it's Sologenic, they connect then to a gateway to the XRP ledger.
Got it.
Right? And that's how you get into the XRP ledger and the exchange. It's not going to be direct in. There's going to be an entity there, a regulated financial institution, most likely a bank. You're not going to be like a MoneyGram. It's going to be like a bank. A MoneyGram could play a role as a sponsor, but it's going to be a bank to get in. Right. And they're going to build this is where they build their applications that for their customers to use, value-added services. And Codius allows those applications then to communicate with the brokerage firms, the tokenized, to get the prices for tokenized stocks, price feeds for the collateralized depositions. It's the glue that brings everything together with smart contracts.
Right.
Smart programs. Really, the word that Stefan Thomas uses, like Ethereum contracts are dumb contracts. They're not smart.
Right.
Smart programs are what Codius is doing. It's the next level. And that's why it's so special. And it was referred to in the early days as the holy grail of like blockchain 3.0. So even though XRP Ledger was one of the first, it's been able to be enhanced by these abstraction layer. Not everything has to be built into the network to enhance it.
Yeah, wasn't there an older video that somebody described Codius as like a 10 to ACH's?
Yes, that was the guy from Coin Trust. Yeah. So that was 2013.
Yeah, 2013, and it was still considered a 10 compared to ACH's payment system. I mean, it was like, damn.
Absolutely. And now, like that layer, it could be the clearinghouse layer of traditional finance you compare it to.
Sure.
So it just allows for more options. So a lot of the drawbacks and flaws that central bankers or traditional markets rip on cryptos and blockchains for being, slow, not able to scale.
Yeah.
They're like clunky. They're never going to adapt. That's not the case with XRP Ledger. That's what makes it uniquely special. It's not like the other ones.
Right.
Because you have an ecosystem that was built around it to grow as adoption does. Like this, for example, not forcing it in and just, issuing a ton of coins on the ledger.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so do you want to stay on Codius, or do you want to shift gears to the ledger and the stablecoin?
Yes, I just wanted to just touch on PolySign since we're in that realm now, and then we'll swing back to the collateralized depositions.
That's a great idea. Let's stay here. Let's talk about Codius and how you see that impacting PolySign and working with PolySign.
Yes. So nobody's privy to exactly what they're doing with the key management and everything like that. So I'm not going to go into any technical details about that. We're going to discuss of what Codius is capable of with all these crypto exchanges and ODL. So Ripple's initial plan was to run everything through the ledger and build marketplaces on the gateways, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone remembers that was the original plan. Yep. And then they shifted and they built RippleNet, which is basically in this abstraction layer too. So Ripple doesn't say it, and they're very vague with their product suite and all this. They don't describe the details, but RippleNet is this abstraction layer. It's using that technology on Interledger, and you could guarantee they're using smart contracts in there to connect one exchange to the other exchange. The goal is to connect all these crypto exchanges and liquidity providers to the XRP Ledger as the main hub where the payment has to route through anyway to get to that other exchange. So you might as well just put those exchanges as gateways, or at least to start, what they're doing now is payment channels between the gateways to move XRP around.
Okay, so hold the phone a minute, because this is sounding pretty similar to something that I say a lot on this channel is about everything runs on the ledger. And I've even said that all exchanges at some point will have to run, touch, or cross the XRP ledger for the consistency of adopting a virtual framework that becomes that trust layer that the entire asset space, digital asset space, is built off of. This is what you're saying, basically.
Absolutely, because these transactions are happening off ledger on other exchanges. We're talking about just XRP right now. So
Right.
if you're going to send from one corridor of some off ledger exchange to another one, it's going to have to run through the ledger to go to that exchanges or through a payment channel.
That's right.
But why keep them at such a distance? Why not just synchronize them end to end with a smart contract?
Right.
On this ledger to that ledger. That's what the synchronization is. It's all the products together.
Yep.
It's XVIA, XCurrent, and XRapid, originally what they called it, but with Codius on top too, and in a ledger. And there's all the price oracles in there. So you're able to do this not on the XRP ledger, but it's going to run through the ledger on the gateways. So the payment's going to go between them. So let's just connect them in through the gateways, and they could price then the orders eventually on the decentralized exchange, because the decentralized exchange on the ledger is superior to any other exchange on the market.
Now, let me
Coinbase, Binance.
Yeah, let me ask you a quick question here, because you're making a good point about Codius's role, how it plays a role, how it's its own layer. It doesn't have to listen right to the ledger or anything. It beats to its own drum. I mean, I know that some of these, look, the protocols do what the protocols do. That's what makes them a protocol, right? Each one uniquely unique to itself, I should say.
Yep. And then they go together, but they complement each other.
Exactly. And it almost seems like just as much by design as it is by intention to not allow any one particular protocol to have complete governance over all aspects of all things. This way you have this multi-layered system of protocols or layers itself, if they're not full-on protocols, that are operating, but no one thing, like it can't just be all the ledger. The Codius has to work with that. The ILP has to work within that, right? All of these things, like an orchestra, right? It's really orchestrated. These all play a role and serve. And it just seems to me like that's the smartest way to have it happen, because you don't want one element of all of this get corrupt, and now everything's corrupt, right? Codius runs on its own thread. You know what I'm saying? It's hitting me. I love it.
It really is. And like you're saying, when you say run through the ledger, we haven't even seen the XRP ledger to its full capabilities.
Exactly.
So when they bring the gateways back, when PolySign goes live, they'll be able to then track that transaction from that exchange and whoever had it on that exchange identity to where it's going on the other exchange or other beneficiary.
Right.
Right? So PolySign is going to tie all these crypto exchanges together for ODL to work. And I think that's like the final piece here. And tie all those hosted wallets together. Because, Ripple doesn't talk about it, but everyone on RippleNet has, if you're using ODL, you got a hosted wallet.
Now, do you think it goes as far, and I mean, we're speculating on this question, but I'm just thinking about this. PolySign, ends up, complementing the exchanges. Do we see something regulatory wise that instead of the exchanges holding all these crypto assets themselves, that they have to put them in a custody like PolySign, to be legit?
Yeah, in a way, you can do it, because if Codius could tap into, say, the wallet that, say, Binance is holding of XRP,
right,
they would know exactly how many XRP they're actually holding, and then tap right into the XRP Ledger and be able to see the transaction histories of everything as well.
Right.
So you can now get into these exchanges, because when trades happen on these Binance and Bitso, it's all off ledger. It's like from one wallet, from one address tag to another one within the same wallet.
Yeah.
That's all it is. But there's no transparency.
Right. Exactly.
And now if those transactions then have to go over the ledger, and you can tap into that wallet, you see where it's actually going.
And if it goes through chain analysis before it goes on to the ledger, come on in.
See, then you add in that. Like, that's a different layer. Like the whole data analysis, AI, that's the chain analysis side. But once it comes onto the exchange and out of the exchange, if it's using an XRP wallet, it's going to hit the ledger.
Right.
When you send your XRP out of Binance to, say, Coinbase, it hits the ledger because it has to go over the ledger as a payment.
Absolutely.
So if they could connect all those together, like, that's what ODL is kind of doing. It's just tracking everything, end to end.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, now just for anybody who may not know, for some strange reason, PolySign, Jack McLeod, the CEO, has said that they are going to launch in 2020, sometime this year.
Yes.
So,
two things I just want to throw in there quick. The web payments are big, and that's coming this year.
Absolutely.
Codius is part of that too, because that will be how you do the receipts, how you do poll payments for credit cards.
Yeah.
So there might be different versions of Codius, but the basic, that's what it's going to be used for.
Yeah. And to your point, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw PayPal in the Is Cash Still King congressional hearing actually say in the congressional hearing, we could be using Ripple XRP for low value payments right now. Right now, he said. It's exactly what he said.
Ledger is basically fully designed now, finally. Like, all the protocols are basically set. Now they're just building the Ledger network up. But the XRP Ledger is like the heart of that, just to send payments to the Ledger gateway that could get processed. So these gateways or exchanges are going to be ILP connectors in the Ledger network, the Internet of Value.
Yeah.
So you start seeing how one thing's coming together, it fits in with the other component. And then we need custody. So PolySign's the final piece for custody.
Yes.
For traditional institutions to come in. And I think we're going to see a huge explosion in the next year or two in wallets. We're going to move away from the offline cold storage thing. Is going to be like history in 5 years from now. Because once the wallets, you could have a hosted wallet that you could retrieve your key.
Yeah.
And have it hosted with, say, like the bread. But they can't access your wallet without your identity. So our identities, I see, getting tied to, say, our hosted wallet. But that's with, like, actual company or a reputable wallet provider, a trusted entity. Could be a bank, could be Bank of America, could be MoneyGram, make their own wallet.
Well, you're making a huge point here that I think is really not something that's been talked about a lot, because we're just moving into this next leg of maturity with the entire digital asset space. So what you're talking about is really, there's cold storage. I mean, there's a lot of different options for storage, but there's what we currently have that exists now, right? Versus where we are going. What we currently have for a solution in the market with the current things that are out here today, which are fantastic products and they're great ways to protect yourself, but it is not the scalable solution for the future to bring the institutions into masses. And that's why we're going to see like a PolySign launch.
Absolutely. So maybe some people remember Ripple, typically, they're ahead of everything. When they first launched in 2013, they had their own hosted wallet. It was called Ripple Trade Client. They were all into making themselves a wallet provider.
Right.
And they saw that needed to be addressed, because people can't be losing their keys, but they don't want to trust, some company that might go out of business next week, and then all your XRP is gone.
Gone. Exactly.
So you have to have a balance of, not left up to yourself, but you need to be able to retrieve your keys. And the only way you could do that is if you could prove that with your identity. So your identity needs to be attached to the wallet. So where with like a nano ledger, there's no identity attached to it. It's all anonymous. Right. So some of these Bitcoin maxis, they might not like that, but that's where we're going here. It's the real world. You know, your identity, your money, you know.
It really is. I just shared
finance.
Yeah, and you know, and look, I just shared an article from, you know, Steve Mnuchin from the United States Treasury Department, who really refers to cryptocurrencies, and at one point in a Forbes article referred to Bitcoin as a national security threat and cryptocurrencies in general as a security threat. And look, XRP, this is where the wordplay, the academic wordplay comes into mind to me, right? Mm-hmm. You know, we hear this academic speak, or we hear them say these broad terms in a way where they'll use cryptocurrencies, and everybody thinks, well, that means we're no good. It's like, well, XRP doesn't have a definition yet. And I think it's important to remember that, because it's not a cryptocurrency, or it would have already been one, right?
It's unique in a couple different ways.
That's right.
I think the validation, you know, gets overlooked slightly by the regulators, or at least publicly when they talk about it. There's no incentive to mine, or you don't have to stake this value.
That's right.
So that makes it unique in that way. So nobody's trying to like take over the network or attacked through, you know, the value of mining or whatever.
Right. Or it's turn electricity into cash, right?
Exactly. Now, the way XRP Ledger's consensus is, how it can't be attacked in the same way that Bitcoin and Ethereum and even proof of stake could be attacked, where you don't have to listen to those validator nodes.
Right.
But like David Schwartz's proposal said, they're about to amend and enhance the ledger in a couple different ways.
Yeah.
We know about the collateralized deposition, which we're about to really dive into.
Yeah.
And the validators. So once the validator registry, we could get the validators public. Every XRP Ledger validator is public if you go to the validator registry, but it's maintained by like Ripple. So
absolutely.
I would just shift that to like some other distributed entity, but the miners aren't publicly known.
Right.
And Bitcoin, nobody who knows who they are signing the transactions.
Yeah.
No idea. Nothing.
That's a great point.
And it's anonymous. You don't know who it belongs to. With the XRP Ledger, these validators are known entities. They're like telecoms, exchanges, IT firms. You know, this is their business. This is what they do. You just run a server, run the software, and maintain it. That's all you got to do.
Yep. And there's an SEC validator node on the network, for goodness sakes.
Exactly. So now that SEC validator could peer with those other validator nodes, make sure nobody's doing anything maliciously.
Exactly.
The XRP Ledger's transaction history also doesn't get added to every other ledger and then stored like Bitcoin is all one to one to one. It could be sharded out, and it is, onto an offline then database. Now that data, all that ledger history is accessible to anyone.
Right.
So at any point you could go back, boom, up, and the hash function shows that transaction happened between that account and that account for X amount of XRP, and XRP and to that account received at that time with those IP addresses. So you could track everything down to the second.
Absolutely.
On the ledger. That's what a hash function is.
Right.
Or a hashtag. It's that moment when the transaction happened. Like the FATF said, where did it come from?
Right.
How much did you get of it? At what time did it happen?
That's right.
The XRP Ledger has all those fields set up in the accounts that just need to be filled in. And the wallet providers will then have their wallet set up in the same way. You put your identity in.
Absolutely. So, okay, so now we could shift gears to the
Yes.
stablecoin. Okay, so
Yes.
the XRP Ledger, David has said, now he said this before Swell, and I went out there and I had the opportunity to talk with him about it, and it was an incredible 3 days. It was incredible 3 days, right?
When you asked him about it, was he like glowing? Like, was he excited?
He was. He's enthusiastic. He really was enthusiastic about having the conversation, and he doesn't come off as somebody like, if it's not right, you're not going to keep talking to him about it. He's going to correct it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But in a nice way, because he's very, very polite guy. He's a very cool guy. I really loved meeting him, and I just felt like I was literally sitting next to a genius, and I wanted to soak up everything he was saying. And I would only wanted to talk as much as I could to get out what I wanted to know, and then I would not speak, because I knew that the more he spoke, the smarter I get. So I don't want to talk.
Exactly. And he gave us almost a 28-minute video of all the details that you'd want to know.
Exactly.
I mean,
so let's talk about that. Go ahead.
So most of the people watching probably know we speculated on this over a year ago when Kava made the announcement, right?
That's right.
But before we start with this, there's just one huge key difference with the XRP-backed stablecoin than any other real project out there. MakerDAO, Kava, any of the others.
Yeah. David
Schwartz has always said it. We haven't had a use case for it, but it was built in for a reason, and it is very powerful. And that's the on-ledger decentralized exchange with built-in order books and auctions and pathfinding.
Yeah.
And trust lines and IOUs.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to the everything runs on the ledger, man.
Exactly.
Everything.
The fact, and David Schwartz said it, that the stablecoin is redeemable for XRP at any time on demand is the most important thing to know about what they're developing, because there's no price peg. The stablecoin is not going to be out on other exchanges building up liquidity. There's no need for that.
It doesn't need for that.
It's going to be used for the financial marketplace built on the ledger.
Yeah.
And other use cases. XRP's already got the liquidity.
So basically what we're saying is that we might be forecasting the next wave of potential FUD. Should they finally should they finally get a definition on XRP and give us that it's finally not a security, which we already know. I think the next potential wave of FUD is that central bank digital currencies have decided to settle their transactions with a stablecoin.
Now the stablecoin could be classified as a financial instrument, and XRP could be and not be classified.
That's right.
Because stablecoin is really a derivative.
Yeah.
These are synthetic assets. That's the correct word to use.
Yeah.
They can be pegged to anything, but if they're backed by over 150% XRP, it is XRP. The stablecoin is XRP. It's just a more like an enhanced version that could do slightly different things. Think of it like a twin that has stable value to whatever it's pegged to. But what comes along with this is you got to get the price feeds for that asset it's pegged to.
That's gotta be some clean numbers coming back through that price feed, brother.
And whoever is giving the price feeds, there needs to be more than one, because one of those oracles go down, one server gets hacked or corrupted. You need multiple oracles.
Absolutely.
So you almost need, this is why Codius just destroys Chainlink. It's useless after this, because these price oracles, would earn fees. So the validators on the XRP ledgers could actually run these smart oracle hosts using the Codius software or whatever they develop on top.
Right.
And collect fees through Interledger and get paid in any currency they want.
Wow.
They don't have to get a Link token or even XRP. Interledger, you pay with any token.
It's incredible. So Okay, so just pulling back. I mean, it's unbelievable. You know what I mean? I just want to make sure we stay in a certain area for a minute. So, what we're really talking about is the potential that you could see a price set stable coin off of XRP as the asset.
Yes. Well, one thing that you and I were just talking about before
Yeah.
we started was that for them to just get this going, and whoever's going to do it, it's probably going to be like the network, because it's one collateral pool.
That's right.
And there needs to be a lot more value in XRP before this launches. This is the foundation for the decentralized infrastructure being built on the ledger. This is a new financial system. It's the foundation with the technology we have at the moment.
That's right.
The only drawback for the whole system is it has to be over collateralized.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So you have to put up $150 worth of XRP to get 100.
That's right.
In stablecoin.
That's right.
And then you pay a little interest. Now, this is important to note, and I don't think everyone knows this. Going off of like MakerDAO and I think EOS has one too. Typically, people always over collateralize. You're not going to just be at 150. Right. So figure they're going to be between 300 to 600% over collateralized.
Yeah.
And then that one synthetics makes you do 750% over collateralized.
Okay.
And they're using their like brand new token they just released. So this is why the XRP is so perfect for this, because XRP's building liquidity and value as a bridge asset and ODL. In the meantime, building up liquidity and going to pull in a ton of value. And then once that happens, you're going to put that value to work to create another asset out of it.
Exactly. Product on product.
Exactly. And you're going to start using your on-ledger exchange, which is going to spur development. Now, all these RippleNet banks, they're on RippleNet, not just to save some percentage on remittance transactions. They're looking to switch their business models and add new value-added services and transactions. Interest rates in fiat are going to zero. Bonds, everything's near zero. They're looking for yield. Now you have these new assets, crypto assets and networks, and now you have tokenized assets coming over from the real world onto these same ledger.
Absolutely. Well, this is what's missing from the market, isn't it? I mean, we don't have these traditional looking products that exist in the digital space. I mean, they're just starting to talk about a lot of these things. I mean, we just got futures contracts back in 18 with Bitcoin, right? To pop the bubble that was there, right? So we're still fighting to get an ETF on Bitcoin. Haven't got that yet, right?
Yeah, but you know what? XRP's and they're not pushing for that because they know it's going to come and be built right on the ledger.
Right.
So why do we need to go push like them to go do it? Then they're going to have to.
They're going to grow into it. They're going to grow into it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's why they started with cross-border payments first, right? So they could get that vertical. Mm-hmm. There's so much liquidity in that vertical right there. It will be very easy to justify launching ETFs and things off of it at that natural organic growth rate that it brings that payment flow to the new network.
Exactly. That's the key is building liquidity. Building liquidity and trading pairs, and then bringing in value to the network and the crypto asset XRP.
Yeah.
You can't just do that, like spin up collateralized depositions and say, give me your token that's worth nothing and has no other use case, and then I'll give you a stable coin.
Right.
XRP has a proven use case as a settlement asset, cross-border payments, solving a problem with hundreds of banks running standardized software and using it for settlement.
Absolutely.
So it's proven. So Ripple's setting up so as that grows and builds out, now these banks and you're like, oh, wow, this is great. What else can I do with this? Okay, here you go. Build what you want for your customers.
Exactly.
Or institutional clients. I mean, like Corey Johnson said, they're watering at the mouth, not to save 10% on remittances. Like, yes, that's to get it going.
Right.
But it's what can be built on top of all of this.
Absolutely, man.
You know, 30,000 stocks are coming.
Yeah, that's just from one company building a platform on the XRP Ledger. Sologenic now, right?
Blair is also doing the same thing. Security tokens and securitized.
Yeah. And I mean, do we think for a second, now we don't know anything, but do we think for a second that owned by the New York Stock Exchange parent company, ICE, is sitting back and watching Coinfield launch Sologenic, and they're going to tap into 30 traditional market platforms, and they're just going to be the only ones that do it, Mickey?
Absolutely. And like SBI with that consortium of all the Japanese banks, they're kind of running their own like private network over there, right?
Exactly.
They said. So this is, you know, like kind of like, in my opinion, why do you need a private blockchain then if you could just spin up these like layer 2 blockchains running, you know, distributed in the cloud that, you know, aren't tied to the necessary consensus of the ledger.
Yeah.
They could create their own consensus among their own little private network or consortium, and then get all the benefits of a public ledger and, you know, the financial ecosystem built on it. I can't ever see R3 evolving in this way because there's no consistent ledger history and no members that are just using it for financial products. They're using it for like niche specialized applications.
Right.
Where a public chain is just a consistent evolving financial system.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah.
Once you solve the privacy and the scalability, I mean, there's going to be a couple big winners in this space.
Exactly.
It's not going to be, we're all going to be level, we're going to all be even fighting for a little piece of the pie in 2025. No, somebody's going to swallow a big piece of the pie.
That's right.
And everyone's going to follow behind them.
That's right. That's right.
And who's in the lead?
Ripple.
Who has the best plan set up for other new use cases?
It's really Ripple, and it's with the spring arm, you know, that they've got there. You know, no one else is really pursuing it in this manner with a real sense of we're building a trust layer for the entire industries, or the entire world to build off of. It's no world is the word because it's every industry. It's not just banking. It's not just finance and remittance. It's not just trade. I mean, it's gaming. It's any other thing that you can think of that's got value exchanged through it or needs value represented of it.
Exactly. And don't ever think for a minute that technology isn't going to just keep getting enhanced and new innovations. 2-3 years from now, you're going to be like, you know, your head's going to be spinning like, wow, I can't believe this advanced so much. You know, we can't just look at like, oh, this is the ledger. This is what they got, ODO.
Right.
Like, this is what they got now, getting going.
Right.
But some people like to, you know, call others out and say, oh, you're hyping this and that. No, we're speculating on what our investment is capable of.
That's right.
And what other investment is going to come out of this investment, or what business idea do I have that can build on there? So once you understand where it could go, like we're starting to see it now.
Yeah.
That this is a global ecosystem that plugs into XRP, but it's not like directly walled guarded. It's an open protocol.
Exactly. Well, and this gets important too because, like I said, we talked about it earlier. I called it academic speak, but the verbiage is really a better way to say it. The verbiage. Sometimes it's academic speak, and we go numb with the ears and the brain, and we just hear wah 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 wah.
Yeah.
You know, and it's Charlie Brown's teacher. I don't feel like adulting today. Right, you know, but this is the things we got to muscle through. It's why we're a community. It's why we have you here and me and everybody that comes through the streams, right? Because we can, you know, we help keep each other in check when these things happen. But the verbiage is so important, and the verbiage now coming from Brad Garlinghouse in the latest Julia Chatterley interview is that they are not a fintech software company, Mickey. They are a blockchain infrastructure company, my friend.
They really are. I mean, that's the terminology that PolySign used with custody. We're infrastructure, one function level up.
It's amazing to me. It's such a perfect. It's like that is the first time I've heard him string those words together as a definition of Ripple ever. It is a coming out, is the way I look at that, and it's like, boy, they are coming home. Look at them growing up. You know what I mean? It's like
true.
It really is. It's like a kid come home from college or the service or something. You're like, boy, look at them. They're all grown up now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're truly building the infrastructure for the new financial. The financial system is going to evolve over years, and the legacy is going to fade out slowly. I'm not going to flick of a switch and, new financial system, quantum this. I still don't even know what quantum means and applied to a financial system.
Sure.
I just like that word. I still, it's confusing to people. I feel like when we hear that, it's like, oh, new quantum financial system. Well, what's quantum? Quantum computing is like 10 years away. So what's quantum about it?
Right.
What is that?
Yeah,
but I can tell you what is being built right now.
Yeah, it's the XRP Ledger.
Yeah. And distributed like file storage, that's all going to be part of this.
Oh,
Web
absolutely.
3.0.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're heading into more of the best way I could describe it is distributed. Not necessarily decentralized, but we're distributing, like the monopolies are going to get distributed out more. And then there's going to be big regulations on how they decide we're going to handle all this data.
That's right. And I know that the algorithm is considered federated, but it's because of what it's going to do. It's going to bring all these applications and sub-applications and sub-templates and templates, all these different things together to act as one single layer. It's absolutely beautiful what's happening.
It's federated, but it's a distributed federated. So it's not like two people there. It's a distributed federation.
Right.
I mean, that's what basically UNL is.
Absolutely, yeah.
They could just get booted, though.
Yeah, and that's why David gives the speech at the most recent Stanford conference saying no incentive is the best incentive because it's an open, permissionless protocol that doesn't incentivize anybody to be a good or bad actor other than just a good actor, actually. And that's the only incentive. Otherwise, you'll be pushed out of the network.
Exactly. It's amazing how they were able to be basically the only, besides Stellar blockchain or DLT, that has no incentive and has 100% closed ledgers, never even a hiccup once it got going.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
No hiccup, no wasted energy, no locked up value of staking. They would just start off a little centralized and will distribute out. And now he's looking to enhance it to where separate the signing of transactions from the governance of amendments and voting on those and like monitoring the network, like the other side of governance.
Yeah.
Now, what do we hear the World Economic Forum say? We want a consumer protecting governance framework. That seems perfectly to just fit in a holistic, that layer. That's where it would be.
Yeah.
And it could tap in. Like, that layer could tap directly right into Bitcoin if it has a node on the Bitcoin ledger.
Absolutely. And we know Bitcoin's been on the ledger, XRP Ledger, since 2014. Mickey.
Yes. And that's another thing that you brought that up. We're going to see a lot more of that once we get PolySign and once we get these gateways under control. Because the gateways right now, when they issue assets, you can't tell if they have that asset. Are they holding that Bitcoin they're sending over? You don't know. You have to trust them.
Yeah.
But hopefully now with like either PolySign or how they're going to do it, it's now doable once you have that layer that could tap in and even broadcast, just monitor the gateways that they have the assets they say they have. Right?
Yep.
And I saw a lot of comments. I just want to swing back around and speculate on the cloudized stablecoin.
Sure, absolutely.
So now let's picture a visual like this. There's going to be gateways. You're going to have financial institutions, or possibly, what Stephen Thomas said the plan is, central banks as the gateways, who provide the backstop liquidity to the market makers and liquidity providers on the ledger. Will the central banks go for that in like a year or two from now? Because I personally don't see like a mass rollout of CBDCs for like at least 1 to 3 years.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
What
because,
do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what I'd lean to with your question is. What I lean to is the 2020 press release of Brad Garlinghouse saying that the top 10 of the top 20 banks will be using and custodying digital assets in 2020, or sometime during the year, right? So
that's huge comment.
That's huge. I mean, it's enormous.
It's going to change everything, because once they're holding those assets, they're going to just be like itching to create products on these. They're not these. We got to remember, the banks don't want the XRP because they want to speculate like us. Oh, it went up 80% this year.
Right.
No, they're going to create business models, revenue streams, new financial products, target new customers.
Yeah.
They got to compete with Libra and big tech.
And I'll tell you something. Just the notion of the fact that going back to, that's in Ripple's press release, man. I mean, it's like, I mean, they never come out and say, we're going to the moon. But I mean, that's pretty much, hey man, bring your flag because we're going to the moon. You know what I'm saying? The top 10, half of the top 20 banks of the biggest banks in the world will be using and custodying digital assets. I believe I have that correct if I remember right. And that to me is like, when have you ever held an investment and somebody just Babe Ruth the hell out of that, just like bat at the wall, like it's going over? You know what I mean? This year, Well,
I think it's like unique because I think only certain people like you, me, and a lot of people in this community truly understand that. The regular person would say, oh, yeah, okay, it's still 23 cents. It's been on a decline for 2 years.
Yeah. No, you're
That's
right.
What the typical person would say.
Well,
then the person in the community who doesn't really understand all that will say the same thing.
Yeah.
And they don't want to look further into it.
Well, that's exactly right.
I don't understand it. That's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
They're dealing with banks. I don't want to invest something. I'm down with banks.
Yeah. How come they keep putting more total circulating supply on?
It's the dumbest argument when we look back. The miners are selling Bitcoin to a communist country to keep electricity going.
Exactly.
To solve math problems.
Yeah.
Ripple's incentivizing an ecosystem.
Exactly.
And they're doing a pretty good job.
I would say so.
I get the price is not. Yeah, exactly.
By the way, tonight the total circulating supply went up 38.5 million is why I brought that up tonight. Thank you.
That could be, it could be anything. That could be a escrow getting released that was
could.
Under a deal that went to somebody and has lockup.
Sure.
We don't know if it's going to the circulating supply. We know every mined coin is mostly going to circulating supply.
No, absolutely. And it will, and to your point too, Cryptopolis makes a good point, because I always say they're preparing to bring utility on the network. And then he says that the way he says it is even better, actually. But he says they're preparing to provide more liquidity. And that's exactly right. You know what I mean? And that is exactly the way to say it and see it. It's like there's going to be a reason that they needed to put more water in the pool.
Yep, it's seigniorage. They have the lender of last resort ability to distribute and plan out the monetary policy and distribution of the network.
How else?
It's not limited to a protocol made by a mysterious guy who had no clue really where the project was going to go.
Exactly. I liken this to, because most people, the first thing they say is, "Oh man, that's a pump and dump. That's a pump and dump." It's like they don't know what they're talking about, because the reality is if you really drill down on what Ripple is doing with getting XRP disseminated through the world, and that's what's happening. And they're doing it by getting the select players that have the right amount of utility to bring to the network, at least in the beginning, right? That can absolutely bring that utility to the network with their payment flows, their needs, right? Cross-border payments, first vertical.
Mm-hmm.
And then now
Market
you've got this utility brought to the network. The price goes through the roof. We're going to work, ladies and gentlemen. We can do a whole bunch of stuff now.
Oh, we're Ripple on ready to go. I mean, I think they're still, implementing, but Ripple went hard in like 2016, 17, setting up all those big banks in the corridors they needed them in. Yeah, and then they pivoted to the money service providers because we're like, we don't need double banks in each corridor if it's not necessary. Exactly. They have those connector hubs set up, ready to go. Exactly. So that works, in my opinion, I think it's ready to go.
To me, it's like it's so responsible if you watch the way they've done it. And every time the escrows come out, it's like they just don't dump them into the market. They use a measured amount that makes sense to whatever formula they're working with based on the level of clients and the needs and where they're going. Miguel Villas is doing an amazing job at building liquidity for this company. It's incredible in this asset.
The escrow is called a war chest for a reason.
Yep.
And it's used as a strategic weapon.
That's right.
For a reason.
That's right.
It's the most advantageous aspect of XRP compared to any other crypto. Yeah. Like, look at Stellar. They burned half their supply.
That's right.
They couldn't even give it away. Nobody wanted it.
That's right. Yeah.
But the community, the market's like, oh, wow, they cut the supply down. I'm like, no, that's bad. That's not good. That means you can't get rid of it. You can't distribute it.
Yeah, they're having trouble getting people to hold it, obviously. You know what I mean?
Like you said, we're still in an immature market. Ripple's developing and prepping the network and the software and development for the institutional market coming in.
Absolutely.
Who's on the sidelines. And when they come in, they're going to come with big money, and they're not going to have the same mentality as, the circulating supply went up 2 million, they're dumping on us. No, they're going to be like, can I get some of that directly from Ripple?
Right, exactly.
Or can they loan it to me? Like, now, here's what I want to just finish off with.
Yeah.
DI played a video last week where Miguel Villas said, the banks or Goldman Sachs will come to us and we'll loan them XRP and collect an interest rate.
Exactly.
So if we assume that some of the XRP is already pre-allocated, some was sold at 5 cents, some are sold at the prices they are now, and then they're released in a year, and XRP's 20, whatever bucks, 50, $100 by then. And some is loaned on the arm, not on the arm, but with interest and some guarantees that if it blah, blah, blah drops, so you eliminate the risks. Ripple can do that.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Now, if this has all been allocated or loaned, and you're building this collateralized deposition, right?
Yeah.
It's the perfect way to bootstrap it and spin out some of these synthetic stablecoins to then use and create other financial products, because it's basically just boosting liquidity.
That's right.
Without the Fed printing more money.
That's right.
So you're going to get fiat out of putting in this XRP that you borrowed or you paid a fraction for, and you're getting fiat for it.
That's
fiat
right.
Unit of account, at least.
That's right.
And the Fed didn't print that. The bank didn't fractionally reserve loan it out.
That's exactly
from
right.
Bank deposits. It's not e-money. It's a new type of money.
That's right.
Credit. In a way, it is a synthetic credit derivative.
Yeah.
But that's okay. But it's the unit of account with an actual asset that's on demand, redeemable, and convertible to that asset, which has global liquidity with all other assets.
There's no question about it. And that's the only way to really get it to be able to serve like a commodity like gold and oil that is all over the world and in demand, right? Is to get it in the hands of the players all over the world that can bring the utility and value to the network itself. Basically, they've taken the idea of protocols that exist on the internet and they've made a token to represent the value that's going to absolutely move and settle across this protocol. And in doing so, they've decided to entice, I believe, with the pre-allocation theory, all of the right players of the world to say, well, why do I want to stop doing it the way I'm doing it? You know, well, because we'll give you some of this. And if we get everybody else to pitch in on this, and they bring their utility to the network, it will approximately put that $55 trillion market, break it down over 100 billion coins at a price of X amount of dollars, right? And then they say, hey, I think I will play along. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean, we touched on this a while back, but this is a hedging capabilities now.
Absolutely, man.
They could hedge XRP volatility with this stablecoin.
Yes.
You know, you take out some stablecoin, you go short on XRP, some, if it drops. I mean, the market makers now have more tools to play with.
Right.
You're starting to build up tools.
Well, that's the important thing that you're driving home here is that, again, this has to look, even though it's a new digital asset space, a new asset class being introduced to the traditional commodities market, it has to have and resemble the products and the overlying products of the underlying asset. It's got to have all these things that look like the traditional markets or the institutions, and the people ain't going to bring the money here.
It has to, absolutely. Like, you got to start out with what they know. I mean, you got to incentivize. That's what they did.
Yeah.
And look at where traditional market yield is going. Interest rates are not near what they used to be. Bonds are down.
Oh, terrible.
Smart money's looking for higher yield. And now you're offering them a whole new financial marketplace to build on.
Absolutely. In fact, just to your point, Cryptopolis made a post a little earlier this evening, and I want to show it just because it was so spot on, just so everybody understands, because the traditional markets and the convergence of the traditional markets in the digital asset space are quickly approaching a crossroads. And today, the U.S. Treasury bill and note closed below 1%. Only the 20 and 30-year bonds are above 1%, Mickey. This is a disaster.
10-year? Which one?
Yeah, the 10-year.
10 years below 1%.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. That's what I'm saying. They're on the sidelines just waiting.
Yeah.
Waiting. Because now this stablecoin is going to pay out. The free market will determine the interest rate. Because if it's in demand, it could make a Dow's die, pays 5-6% they're paying out.
Who isn't going to take that all day long?
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's going to be entities who are going to want to use it.
What's going to happen?
Let's touch on how this. I just want to stress here how these synthetic stablecoins are very beneficial for like XRP's value and development.
Yeah,
they're complementary. They're like they're a complement to XRP that they both benefit each other.
Right.
Right? Now, that synthetic asset is XRP. I just want everyone to understand that.
Right.
And you're going to be tying up a lot of the circulating supply. You're going to give investors, institutional retail, new avenues to put their XRP instead of selling it. So you remove downward sell pressure.
There you go, right there.
You don't have to maintain a peg on all these other changes. You don't got to build liquidity for it. XRP has the liquidity.
That's right. Meanwhile, the flywheel theory creates a buy-back pressure on top of everything that you're saying here, because the market makers are going to look to snatch this up just as soon as they identify that utility is actually driving the price. It's going to cause a massive grab to get as much of this off the market into their own bags.
It absolutely will. And I mean, it has to be said, and we said this last year, it gives this is a new use case for XRP as a store of value. We've now programmed money in a way that the central banks just that they can't even comprehend is possible. What was ever possible? We have whatever unit of account they get a price feed on.
Yeah.
That you really don't have to maintain a peg, and you have actual convertibility for an asset that has global liquidity.
And a true sustainable store of value within the asset because of everything that you just mentioned about how they've designed it, how they've brought it into market. That is the key point right there, man.
The fact that if you're using XRP as collateral to back this synthetic asset, how can XRP then not be considered a highly liquid asset under Basel III?
Exactly.
How can it not be when it's doing it?
Right now.
In the future. Well,
exactly. It's happening now. Absolutely. And you could see it.
Yeah. So I know some of the Basel III and the ECB said that, we can't use crypto as collateral and it's not a highly liquid asset on your books and this and that. But this is how XRP would differentiate itself when it's proving that it's already doing that.
Yeah.
I know Ether's doing it, but they're going for retail. Right. And what XRP is doing is going to be enterprise and institutional, but it will be accessible to retail.
Absolutely.
I think as a community, we should focus on this.
I think so too. There's no question about it. I mean, and there's going to be a lot of winners. I think the ETH and the ETH network is going to be a huge winner. I'm not giving financial advice, and I know you're not either, but I mean, I'm just expressing my opinion. There's going to be quite a few winners out in this space. But,
there's going to be, because the market, there's plenty of market share. It's all the money. Right.
That's exactly all the money.
You have one market fading. It's going to be a slow transition over the years, but the ones that offer higher yield, more financial products that are attractive, and higher yield. That's all what it comes down to.
Well, it really does come down to that. When you're looking at markets that are collapsing right before our eyes, for those that don't understand, and I'm not a historian or a technical guru, but I understand that the bond markets, generally speaking, are the foundation of the house. When they start going to hell in a handbasket, so's the roof, right? So that's all you really need to understand. And when they see that there's no value in holding those notes at that low of a rate, and you start to really bring in this DeFi market over here in the digital asset space and offer anything north of 3 to 5%, let alone 7 to 9%, you're going to have people flooding to put their money into this market.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure many of these RippleNet banks and the ones invested in Ripple, like SBI, saw this a while ago.
Sure did.
But now you're going to see the mainstream, like institutionals, say, who would you feel most comfortable building on what platform? I mean, R3 is great, but there's no marketplace there still.
Exactly, man. All right, so let's final thought this thing.
Final thought, can we just go into the back-end liquidity?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's really interesting, and I think it plays into this.
Yeah.
How this is going to boost liquidity for XRP. So we all know has to be over-collateralized 150%.
Right.
Typically, people are going to over-collateralize. So whoever the issuer is or whoever maintains the collateral pool only has to keep 150% collateral there at all times. Right? Now that back end, this is one big pool. Everyone has their own CPD, and in one pool though.
Right.
But you have your own contract, right? So that pool is going to be over collateralized, say to average 500%, right?
Yep.
So now we have 350% that the issuer could either loan out, create derivatives on, do whatever with.
Right.
Loan to like market makers who need liquidity on demand for the network, for whatever reason. That is something the traditional markets are struggling as all hell to do. They have no liquidity. They're borrowing from the Fed, last resort, lender of last resort.
Absolutely.
Now you have abundant liquidity over here.
Right, because it's over collateralized.
Yeah, and you're paying interest out. It's just creating a market on the back end and then circling all the liquidity around. As long as there's no crazy price spikes or price drops.
Right.
But the system, the way it's auctioned, you don't, if your collateral deposition is overtaken, you're only going to lose like 1 or 2%. You're not going to like lose everything. You still hold the stablecoin then.
Right. Yeah. You still have what you drew off of the asset you put up.
Yeah. I was just looking through Stuart XRP's post, and there are a lot of comments. I know a lot of people don't understand this yet, but if you don't get it, it's not easy to wrap your head around. But once you do, it's something I would take the time and look into.
Absolutely. And I would encourage everybody to not only follow the channel, hit the like and subscribe, but to get inside of that Investment Perspectives Telegram group.
Yes.
There's such a conversation of, first of all, there's a great level of respect everybody has for one another. And there is such an amazing group of really, really bright people. And it's a broad spectrum. So somebody might be a newbie in the space, but they may have like amazing knowledge because they work in traditional finance market. You know?
Exactly. We got a great group.
We got a great group in there, man.
Yeah, and we we test the boundaries a little without going too far off the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
Speculate, and we discuss what's going on, and don't be afraid to look back at what was being built a couple years ago.
Exactly.
Instead of just looking at everything that's just being built now. Like Michael McDaniel said, and I got to give him credit for this. He's like,
he's amazing.
To understand what's coming in the future, look at what was done in the past.
100%.
Why did Ripple pivot in this way? What was it that made them do this and do that?
That's right.
So once you see their history,
yeah,
I mean, they're going to make a movie out of this. I mean,
it's 100%.
There's no question. I mean, the only way this fails is if the network goes down.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it won't. And it won't. And it's got too much backing, and it will not do it. It is the new digital arm. In fact, I just did a recent video, and I really believe that, with the new job posting of the senior manager position for Bank Secrecy Act, AML, and Economic Sanctions Program, look, I've leaned into this with you. We've talked about it on the show. But I really do think at some point, RippleNet becomes a part of SWIFT. It is the new digital arm of SWIFT. It just hasn't officially happened yet. I do believe that, and I believe it for a lot of other reasons than just that post. And that's my final thoughts, to keep an eye on that sometime in the future with RippleNet.
That ISO standard, that's what should be when they could interoperate completely with each other.
Absolutely. And I also feel like, that's another distinction of why Ripple, the company, is a blockchain infrastructure company, because RippleNet is really going to become the digital arm of SWIFT, because they're going to set that up exactly the same way SWIFT is, with the economic sanctions and all the team and all of that, because they're doing it already. You can see it happening. So I look, that's my speculation too, but I want to leave people with that, because I really do feel like that. The other thing that I feel like that about as well is 300 of the largest banking partners of the world have come over to RippleNet. SWIFT is owned by the private banking system, right? So it's like, if they came over from SWIFT to RippleNet, it seems like an orchestrated thing, like from the very beginning. We're going to need a new SWIFT, and if you can get this thing to live, we'll buy it when it gets old enough and mature enough and it proves itself out. Because all of these things don't get just a pass, right, Mickey? They got to earn their way. The tech has to earn its way. The innovation has to become the standard. And that's exactly what we're watching with XRP. I believe that.
It absolutely is the interoperability standard, and then everything else that was built on top is just so much superior to SWIFT. Right?
Absolutely.
If they're just getting end-to-end visibility and they're having a big parade about it, Ripple's being very humble when they say that we just have end-to-end. No, they have full tracking end to end. Once they synchronize the ledgers together, that's it. And then once you could bake the KYC and AML end to end, that is the regulation in the software. You know if that payment is legit, and the AML is that person, KYC is right there in the software, and then can be looked over on demand by the regulator if there's any flags or anything come up. They don't got to spend 2 months doing an investigation like SWIFT. So it's more efficient for the regulators, for the banking costs, and it's just such a better system. How can you not adopt it? The only ones who wouldn't would be who has something to lose.
Yeah, exactly.
Correspondent banking's dying off. I mean, it's a dying system that's outdated for small value transactions.
Which is another reason why I believe that RippleNet becomes the new arm of digital financial arm of SWIFT. I really do. And eventually their new platform. Ultimately,
and to add to that, it could, since it's distributed nodes in the cloud that have the capability of having their own consensus and price oracles and checks on each other, nobody really could ever gain a monopoly within that network the way Citibank and Chase own correspondent banking.
Yep.
Nobody's really going to ever own all of RippleNet. They're all going to be standardized in the same software with the same capabilities.
That's right.
Without paying high fees to just two.
Exactly. That's where we're
financial inclusion, and the regulators are part of RippleNet.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the compliance is built right into it.
But the regulators are like on the RippleNet advisory board. They built it with them.
Yep.
You know, this wasn't just built and say, hopefully they'll say it's good.
Exactly. Yeah, this has all been about integration and bringing the people from the compliance, from the regulatory regimes, from all the different entities, the U.S. Treasury Department. Unbelievable what we're seeing go on. Micky, thank you so much for being here, brother.
You're welcome. Yeah, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, ECB, Ripple's worked with all of them. I mean, it's amazing. It really is.
It really is, man. What a time to be alive and to have the awareness and know that this is actually taking place. Unbelievable. Micky B. Fresh is lighting it up tonight. And now this is going to be fun for you and I, Micky B, because we're going to release this later and we will be able to participate in the stream. Now, I got to tell you, I'm looking forward to that, man. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah, that's going to be really cool. Thank you so much for having me on. Always a pleasure. I love talking about like this topic the most because I think it's the biggest impact it's going to have in the future that we just don't see yet.
I completely agree, brother.
Hold on tight. It's going to be some ride the next decade.
It sure is, man. All right. Well, look, take care, Micky. Obviously, you and I will continue to talk offline. Really, really great show tonight, brother. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge, bro.
Yes. Thank you. And good night, everyone. Hope you enjoyed.
Absolutely. Guys, Micky B. Fresh in the house. Are you kidding me? This guy's amazing. Big thank you to Micky B, man. As always, I'm blown away. There's so much to think about when we do pre-production calls. I feel like a kid at Christmas because I'm getting to talk to him, pick his brain. We go into these different things. And one of these days, I'm just going to record the phone call. And then after we're done, ask him if it's okay if we share it with everybody. Because there's the phone calls we have are just really remarkable too. The energy, connecting with him and all that stuff. So really great stuff. Thank you, Micky B. And I thank all of you. Hit the like and subscribe on the way out. We're going to keep this moving. Make sure you check the links and descriptions below. The space is growing up. We have a lot of different things that are there in case you're looking for them. I'm sure one of those links in the description box is something you're probably looking for. Thank you to all of you. We will catch you on the next one. Thank you.